This story is really, really interesting to me for a variety of reasons, but the Washington Redskins are changing the name of their team. Redskins is something that is interpreted as a slur by many people. And there's been a movement for a long time to sort of get them to change the name. And now they're actually doing it, so let's take a look here. It says, for immediate release, July 13th, 2020, statement from the Washington Redskins football team. On July 3rd, we announced the commencement of a thorough review of the team's name. The review has begun in earnest. As part of this process, we want to keep our sponsors, fans, and community apprised of our thinking as we go forward. Today, we are announcing we will be retiring the Redskins name and logo upon completion of this review. Dan Snyder and Coach Rivera are working closely to develop a new name and design approach that will enhance the standing of our proud tradition-rich franchise and inspire our sponsors, fans, and community for the next 100 years. Okay, so now obviously in the wake of the killing of George Floyd, there's been a lot of protests around the country, and there's been a lot of focus on racial issues, on police brutality, but there has been a noticeable shift as the protests went on, more towards symbolic stuff. And, when it comes to the Confederate monuments, that's the best example of it. But nonetheless, the movement towards fundamental change in society was kind of shifted and diverted and became more about just symbolism. And so you had, NASCAR say, no more Confederate flags at our events, and a lot of corporations trying to grapple with race issues, but doing it in the most corporate way possible, which is, hiring Robin DiAngelo to do white fragility seminars and to, make people become hyper race aware. So in other words, it's not really policy focused. It's not focused on mass incarceration or mandatory minimums or the death penalty and how it's implemented in a racist way, or wages, or all these other issues. It's really focused narrowly on symbolism. So it was as a direct result of that kind of pressure that led to one of the dominoes falling. And then now here's the most important point of this conversation. The next domino that fell. You ready for this? The name of their stadium is the FedEx Stadium. FedEx is the sponsor. They hold the naming rights to the team stadium. They said, if you don't change it, we're out. And it was a snowball effect. There were a lot of deals that Washington had with different corporations, and they basically said, we're out if you don't change the name. So the thing that really led to this moment of reckoning was not the movement, although you could argue that was the first domino to fall, was not popular opinion, was not democratic will, was not them having a moment, an enlightenment moment where they realized why the team name is an issue. It was just money. It comes down to money. Sort of the open symbols of bigotry and a primitive mindset, they're not going to be tolerated anymore. And that's a good thing. But if it just stops there, that is not a win at all. And we've only gone 15 or 20% of the way to what really needs to be done, which is real reform. I think that you can't talk about the issue of race in this country without bringing up the fact that the criminal justice system, the mass incarceration that we do, is, I think, the new Jim Crow, which means it's just an extension. First we had slavery, then we had Jim Crow and segregation. Now we have mass incarceration and the drug war, which is just a way to try to effectively lock up the undesirables in society. Don't take my word for it. Take the word of the Nixon administration, who admitted it. They said, yes, politically, it was hippie white people and people of color who were against us. They're never going to be our political allies. They're never going to vote for us. So we wanted to try to criminalize that lifestyle. So what do? Wage the drug war. Lock them up as much as possible. And then, by the way, oftentimes, they go to prison, and then what happens when they're in prison? They get used as slave labor. We allow slave labor in prisons in this country. So it's an extension of those previous systems of domination, oppression, and control. You can't have a conversation about racial justice without bringing up that. And unfortunately, all the corporations are doing exactly that. Say, what do you want? What do you want? You want us to take down the Confederate flag? Great. You want us to ban it at our events? Great. You want us to take a knee? Great. You want us to put our fist up and say Black Lives Matter? Great. You want us to change the name of the team? Great. They'll give you a million things. How about this? 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 But it's all symbolism. Imagine if we could actually get, because it's really the people with the power, the people with the money, and when the people with the money said we're pulling out, they were like, okay, imagine that we could actually get these power centers to come out for legalizing marijuana and freeing every nonviolent drug offender. Then we're really having a conversation about racial justice. But we're not there yet. And my fear is that there is no focus on that now. Now everybody's taking the symbolic concessions and going, okay, great, it's over. We win. And it's like, that's not okay. And actually, I'm being a little unfair because in many instances, the protesters do realize they're being diverted a little bit. Like when they pulled down a Golden Girls episode, the response was like, nobody asked for that. We didn't ask for that. What are you doing? So, the end of a very long era here. I'm sure conservatives are going to lose their minds over this and act like it's totally unreasonable and act like, oh my God, this is as bad as it gets and this is a tragedy, and they're probably going to go buy up all the Washington Redskins old jerseys and whatnot and make this a bigger issue than it needs to be. But yeah, then we will keep fighting on the culture war front as we don't get real systemic change and the symbolism becomes the centerpiece and everybody's focus moving forward. I want to avoid that at all costs. I don't want the symbolism to be the centerpiece. I want people to be better than that and to look beyond that, because it's so easy to get sidetracked in the culture war and ultimately not change the system nearly enough. But nonetheless, they are changing the name, which is a good thing. And let the messiness commence, because I'm sure it's going to get messy with the fallout from this.